Hi, everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of Beyond the Beam with me, Kevin Williams. Episode two, we're going to be looking at a little in-depth look at subablative lasers. Those who perhaps it's the first time you're tuning in, I would suggest perhaps you should go back and look at future episode one, which is in two parts, part one and part two. But a little bit about me again is that I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've been involved in numerous laser technologies and applications. My background is electronic and laser engineering. I worked with the original team that invented laser hair removal, the Ruby laser for hair removal, that is. And I'm the Chief Technical Officer for Wynyard Sets Academy. We're a well-known training company. I'm the Technical Director of KWLE, and I also lecture on the Facial Aesthetics program in conjunction with Greater Manchester University. I'm also now the Clinical Director of Ceradoom 360. So we've covered this already in episode one, part one, but hopefully everyone now understands what a laser is. It stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. It's a way of converting electrical energy into light energy. And we know it's part of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's made up of packets of energy we refer to as photons. It travels at the speed of light, and it travels in a wave-like pattern. So we've already learned from episode one that lasers can be non-ablative or ablative. So we know that for years we've known that lasers below 2000 are non-ablative, they don't cut tissue, and lasers above 2000 are ablative. So what is subablative? Subablative refers to a wavelength of 1927 nanometer. And 1927 nanometer gives us this effect that we refer to as subablative. It's I guess a fairly new wavelength. It's one that I found, when I researched it, really exciting with some incredible applications. So we know that below 2000 non-ablative, above 2000 ablative. So why is 1927 nanometer subablative? What do we mean by that? So we know it falls into the near infrared spectrum. It's highly absorbed by water. So it'll selectively target water-rich tissues, leading to precise coagulation of soft tissues without damaging surrounding area. So we know that we can produce very localized heating with minimum risk or collateral damage to surrounding tissue. And if you look at 1927 nanometer, it's actually the highest absorption in water before lasers become ablative. So it's got lower absorption in water than the 2940, which is often referred to as a cold laser. Those who perhaps listened to the lecture before would have heard about the cold laser that we can vaporize tissue, and there's very little heat produced, but sometimes you need heat produced to stimulate collagen. And hopefully you've learned about the CO2 system as well. Okay. So we've got this high absorption in water, which we're able to create these micro injuries to stimulate collagen production without affecting the skin surface, leading to less painful, minimum downtime, and more importantly, faster healing times. Okay. So this is an histology highlighted in 1927 nanometer. So when you look at this histology, what is happening here is when the laser fires, it bypasses the stratum cornea. So there's no absorption in the stratum cornea. So what it does, it gets absorbed just beneath the stratum cornea, and it creates these zones of ablation. So it creates these zones of ablation. Now, during the creation of the zone of ablation, we get these steam bubbles rising, which create microchannels, allowing us, we'll find on further on in the lecture, to be able to put a product on to infuse them into these zones and to fill up these zones of ablation. So we know that during the zone of ablation, of course, you're going to get absorption in water, you're going to get absorption in pigment, and you'll start to disrupt some of the pigment in the area, and you'll start to reduce redness as well. But we'll come on to the true benefit of this in a few slides' time. So as well as the zone of ablation, you get this zone of coagulation. So we get this further heating of the tissue beneath, which we know that if we get it to the right temperature, will lead to collagen production. Okay. Now, um, a study came out recently talking about the depth that you can achieve. And on this histology slide, it showed that we get, you know, irreversible thermal damage measured up to around about 0.5 millimeter is the effective depth. Now, particularly when we look at melasma, we know melasma is extremely superficial. So this becomes an important wavelength when we look at treating melasma. But the important parameters is not just about the wavelength. You have to have the correct wavelength. You have to have the correct amount of energy, the correct pulse duration, but you also need to understand the importance of spot size. So when you look at people have used to stimulate collagen, 1565, 1540 are quite popular. But when you compare them, the the absorption coefficient of the Thilium 1927 nanometer is 13 times higher absorption in water than our traditional 1565 or 1540s. So it's got a much higher absorption to get this great effect just beneath the stratum cornea. So it's got 13 times more absorption than our traditional 1565 or 1540. Now, when we look, remember what we want to be able to do is create these zones of ablation to be able to infuse a product into the tissue, okay, to enhance our result. So if you look at the 1927, we can achieve these pockets. But if we're looking at a fully ablated 2940, then you just get ablated tissue. You don't create these zones of ablation. If you look at the 1550 or 1565, 1540, they all produce heat in, but they're not going to create any zone of ablation. And then the CO2 is obviously everyone's familiar, fully ablative, and again is you're not going to create these zones to be able to put these reservoirs to be able to collect a product. Now, when we're considering the absorption of water with lasers, we know that shorter pulsations are traditionally less painful, which result in shorter downtimes. Longer pulsations are more uncomfortable and result in longer downtime. So when treating melasma, we need short pulse durations to avoid a rebound effect. If the pulse duration is too long, we'll just get a rebound of the melasma. So it's really important that we make sure it's not just about the wavelength. It's about the pulse duration as well. If you can have the same wavelength, but your pulsation is much longer, you're going to start creating too much heat. So we know there are different Thilium lasers on the marketplace, and a 20-watt Thilium laser, because you get a higher wattage, will achieve much shorter pulse durations for the same energy setting as you would with a 5 watt. So there's a big difference. So high power is a key factor to achieving the clinical outcomes. Now, if you look at the impact of spot size, this is using 20 millijoules of energy with a 200 micron spot size. And you can see the area, yeah, the zone of ablation. You can see the area of heating, and you get this depth of up to 300 microns, okay? Now, if you look at changing the spot size then to 350 microns, you can see it becomes much more superficial. So the higher the energy, we know the deeper the penetration you get. But the larger the spot size, the shallower the depth of penetration. So it's really important that we consider all these things. The correct wavelength, the right amount of watches to create enough high enough energies to allow us to deliver very short pulse durations. But spot size also becomes critical. And people tend to, I got the same wavelength, therefore it must work the same. So it's really important to look at all these parameters and understand them. So the higher the energy, the deeper it's going to penetrate. The larger the spot size, the shallower the penetration depth becomes when we're looking at these water absorbing lasers. So how do we control the intensity? we control the intensity by the number of microbeams that we lay down. And every machine works slightly different. The machine that we use, Laser MD Ultra, we get all these different delivery modes. So if I'm using a random rolling mode where I randomly roll it over the tissue, it's delivering 40 microbeams per centimeter squared. So I may go over it 3 or 4 times. If I go over it 4 times, now I've increased that to 160 beams per centimeter squared. So we control the intensity by the number of microbeams we're going to lay down. If I want to go and I want to treat very superpigmentation, I may choose a static stamping mode where I can deliver 100 beams per centimeter squared. So the important thing here is we control intensity by the number of microbeams, and that may be the number by stamping or the number of passes you put over the tissue. Okay. There's a new research paper, and I'm glad I waited to record this episode because it's a new paper, and I only had this paper a couple of days ago, but it was showing, and please email me. You'll see my email address at the end if you want me to send you a copy of this paper because it really is a brilliant read. Okay. And it was work with Emily Wallander and Kevin Jacobson, and it looked at the fractured Thilium laser and looking at the effects both from non-ablative to ablative. And what it actually concluded is that you actually get, depending on the energy setting, you'll see these different effects taking place, okay? And so it's worth really looking at this study. And if we look at, I just put a graph out on the study, but this is using, and C1 on this particular machine is a 200 micron spot. So 200 micron spot at 3 millijoules, you can see the effect it's having. If you look at an EMTZ scan, you can see this is the effect it's having. Now, if we switch to 20 millijoules, you can see a much greater effect. And you can see it here, much greater effect. Okay. If we then change the spot size and again, this was using 3 millijoules, again, you can see this different effect. So this was a brilliant study to really show the ablation that takes place with this machine. And we call it subablative because it's ablating beneath the stratum cornea. So why is it so exciting? It's exciting because, as I said, you create these zones of ablation. So the coagulation area here, and the new research, as I said, shows 500 microns, is going to heat up to stimulate collagen. Now, we're going to get a direct effect here because of the ablation. And as I said, it's going to help to remove some pigmentation. It's going to help to reduce redness because that's going to happen by the zones of ablation that we're creating. But during creation of the zone of ablation, steam bubbles rise and create these microchannels. Then what we can do is put a product on, and these channels stay open for about 48 hours. We can put a product on, and that product is going to seep into these zones of ablation. So if I put a typical, say I was using tranexamic acid to treat melasma, and I'll get a certain depth, I'll get a certain amount of penetration. But by creating this zone and these channels, I can increase the absorption, maybe to 80 to 90%. I can get absorption. I can get hundreds of times more absorption of the product, okay, by creating this effect. So what it allows me to do is if I'm depending on what product, I may be using tranexamic acid, vitamin A, vitamin C. I can use these products to treat the condition more efficiently. So what it allows me to do is say, okay, well, I want to treat, say, melasma. I can put a high dose of tranexamic acid and deliver it in a much higher dosage, allowing me to get a treatment resulting in only 1 to 2 treatments. If I use tranexamic acid on its own, it's going to take many weeks of treatment with multiple applications daily. It allows me to get this much greater absorption of the product. So actually the clever name behind laser MD Ultra, it stands for laser assisted single effective molecule delivery. So what's exciting about this machine, you can combine it with different cosmeceuticals or drugs to deliver it into the tissue. That's extremely exciting. This is really an amazing combination therapy. So the ones that are available with the system we use is tranexamic acid, and we use that for PIH or melasma. Retinol vitamin A, VA, we use that for anti-aging, fine lines and wrinkles. Vitamin C for epidermal pigmentation. Okay, and then there's a really good, great product called resveratrol, RS, and apparently it's equivalent to 500 bottles of red wine. Okay, I wouldn't recommend drinking 500 bottles of red wine, but it's great for the treatment of oily skin and for acne care. So we got these products. There's a fifth product which I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about it on a future lecture, which is a product called Factor, and we infuse that to perform a treatment called Keralase for stimulating hair growth. And I look out for that lecture because that's really interesting. And I can say from experience, I've had two treatments, and I cannot believe the difference in my hair. Not only is the hair starting to grow back, um, but also the color changed, it became darker. Other people are using other products. They may be using exosomes to infuse them at greater quantities and other products. But what's exciting about the 1927 is that you get very quick recovery times. So you don't get the long downtimes you get with other ablative or non-ablative lasers. You got this nice glow afterwards. I remember having my first treatment and I just looked like I'd been out in the sun a bit too long. And a few hours later, but the next day, there was no real issue at all. Yeah. So the machine then, which is really easy to use. There's a great video here by Stephen Viner. I haven't played the sound, but if you Google it on YouTube, it'll come up and he explains the procedure really well. Like, and it's really worth a listen to Aesthetic Clinic in the US, Stephen Viner. Okay. You can see they just move in the handpiece back and forth. Okay. It's slightly uncomfortable. Some people may require some form of anesthesia. I've had the treatment without, and I would say probably 70% of people tolerate it without any anesthesia. Um, but it's really easy to use. You can use it for multiple applications. You can treat all skin types all the year round. And I was doing a podcast last night with Fitzrovia Clinic in London, Dr. Holly and Dr. Tony, and they commented on, yes, we even use it for people who have people with tans, which is well, so that shows how safe and easy this treatment is to use. But I also then asked them a question, well, do you use it all the time yourself? It's no, we delegate it. It's so easy to treat. We can get our laser nurse to be able to do the treatment or therapist. So it's really easy for you to delegate this treatment. And, in my opinion, I can remember someone asking me, one of our students, I want to buy, which is the best pico machine I need to buy for treating melasma? And I can remember saying, sorry, let me rephrase, which is the best Pico device I need to purchase? And I said, well, what are you looking to treat? Are you looking to do tattoo removal? No, 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 we just want to treat pigmentation of melasma. And I said, well, actually, what you'd be much better off is getting the laser MD Ultra. And in my opinion, this is the technology of choice for treating melasma. So, um, you can do different treatments depending on the strength of the system. So, this is a treatment that we call baby face, okay? And you can see there's very low energy, 2 to 3 passes at very low energies, okay? You can see like 5 to 8 millijoules. And then you can get this brilliant glow. So for young people, you get this incredible glow afterwards. And lots of people will come in and say, well, can I have another one of these baby face treatments again? So you can see the glow afterwards. And with that, you can use, depending on what you're treating, maybe vitamin A, tranexamic acid, vitamin C, you choose the product you're going to use depending on the condition. Yeah. But for people, older people like myself, we need time correction. So we need higher settings, maybe 3 to 5 sessions, but higher energies. And there's an advanced technique that we teach where you go into a stamping mode at high energy into each wrinkle, and then you do sort of high energy, then you do a pass at a more medium energy, and then you finish with a really superficial pass. So you do a different layered effect. But this is someone before and after 3 treatments. And then you got the Melibrite treatment. And this is all about pigmentation. So we're going to use either our vitamin C or tranexamic acid, depending on what we're treating. And then you're going to use, do 3 to 4 passes, again, at low energy, but using the right product to treat. And you can see this is someone before and after one session. I've just included some photographs. If you go online and type, Thelium lasers into Google, you'll come up with all hosts of photographs. But this highlights the benefits of this system. You can see, that's a brilliant result on pigmentation before and after 4 treatments. This is someone with the darker skin types before and after 3, again from the same clinic in the US. And then if I went on Instagram to just take some photographs off. And this is from Northside Dermatology in the US. And you can see these, I don't know how many treatments, but this is after the 1927 nanometer for treating acne. And this is someone before and after 3 treatments. So they did 3 1927 nanometer and then followed it up with a radiofrequency microneedling as a 4th treatment. But you can see the brilliant results. Chantel is a lady I work with quite closely. I've known her for many years. And the technique I talked about earlier, she tried it out. We were experimenting with different techniques. And this is someone where we've done this multi-layered approach. But you can see this is before and after 1 treatment. So you can see the big improvement. This is someone from a clinic in the UK, Chic Pharmacy, and this is someone before and after. I believe this was before and after 3 treatments. And this is another one before and after treatment. You can see these huge improvements. This is someone from the US treating darker skin types, and again, you can see before and after treatment. Okay. So subablative lasers with the correct parameters can be used on all skin types all the year round. You can use it for multiple applications. It's a treatment that you can easily delegate. And certainly the clinics I know using it, and I have many people that I've worked with over the years that use these systems, report an incredible return on investment because clients like the fact that it's easy to do, it's safe, there's very little downtime, and they get visible results. Other applications that this can be used for. I've got some great photographs and message me if you want to see some copies of them of things like we've seen some reduction in redness. Obviously melasma works really well, pigmentation, and we talked about acne. We're also doing some innovative stuff and look out for a webinar where we're coming up. I'm working with Professor Heron and we've been looking at which is quite exciting. We've been using the Ultra, so laser MD Thelium laser Ultra post CO2 laser. So he'll do a CO2 procedure first and immediately then use Ultra afterwards. And the initial histologies are showing a much better healing time on the side where we've used Ultra. So that's quite exciting research that's coming up as well. So we're going to be we putting these episodes out every week. So we're doing 2 weeks where we'll put up. So week 1 we'll put an episode out. Week 2 we put an episode, and then the 3rd week then we're doing question times with Kevin. Okay. So what we want people to do is listen to the episode. Then if you've got any questions, send your questions to Sophie, you can see Sophie, you can see her email address here, or myself, okay, with the questions. And during then the question time, we're going to be discussing and answering the questions from the previous episodes. And then we're going to be talking about the new episodes coming up. So future episodes, and they may change, the order may change, but we're going to look at a combination therapy where we're going to be looking at how we can combine the Thelium laser with radiofrequency microneedling and combine it with cosmeceuticals. So that's a 4-stage approach. Then what I'm looking forward to is we're going to be doing a more in-depth in melasma, understanding melasma and the current treatments. And There was a new clinical paper I looked at today, which using a sub-micro pulsed KTP laser, and that had also some interesting effects on melasma. So that's quite interesting to look at. Then we're going to look at CO2 lasers and the parameters you need and understanding CO2 lasers. Someone asked me to do a more general one on how do you introduce technology into the clinic, what you should look for when you buy a laser. And then we're going to do a guide for hair removal. And then one I'm super excited about is we're going to be talking about vascular lasers, the principles behind them, the precision that you need, and the progress in the industry as well. This is my website. You can follow me on Instagram, Kevin Williams is an expert. And a big thank you to Cerebrum 360 because they are the sponsors of these series. You can visit to look at all the products that Cerebrum sell on cerebrum.com and follow Cerebrum UK France or Cerebrum Group on Instagram. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Beam, and I will see you next time at our next episode.